Last year, as much to my surprise as to anyone's, I put myself down to take the course offered by Monique called Women of Grace. I was as surprised as this because I had only gone along to the information evening to take a couple of photos for the magazine. Yet when the registration forms were passed around, I found myself filling one in. I've not been able to stick to any regular prayer meeting over the years. I'm one of those flip-flops, you know, due to work constraints and maybe sometimes language as well. Yet here I was, signing myself up for an 18-week commitment. But I think the very fact that it was a finite obligation encouraged me. There were a score or so of us who formed the first intake, and I think I can speak for all my fellow students when I say that the course was enriching beyond our expectations and in ways we had least expected. Every other session includes a video presentation by Jeanette, and I challenge anyone to sit through one of her talks without feeling inspired and uplifted at the end of it, and you know that now. I think that some of us who lead busy lives were indeed challenged by the requirement to prepare study materials in advance of each weekly meeting. But again, the material was so interesting that it became part of one's prayer life rather than a burden. And with the average prep time for each session only taking 40 minutes, you see I timed them. Well, how long does one spend in front of the telly each night watching mindless ham? So far, so good. That was the testimony that I gave on GBC on the 27th December last year. But when Monique asked for testimonies for today, I felt I had to give you people a bit more and some further insight into exactly what Women of Grace has done for me. In the Full of Grace program, there are sections, it's chapter 7 actually, dealing with healing from violence and emotional trauma. Jeanette tells us in one of her videos about women who have come to her after suffering all kinds of abuse, incest, molestation, and rape. Well, some of you here know my story and how I came to be in Gibraltar, but for those who don't, here's a quick prequel. You know, like Star Wars? It's 1984, which I worked at earlier, is actually 30 years ago today, in Iceland. And something bad had happened in my house after a party, and I waited until everybody was asleep, and I put on my coat, and I walked round the corner to the top of a low cliff and watched the icy, cold waves crashing on the rocks below. I know that I won't survive more than 2 minutes in that cold water. I'm waiting for the right wave, a good big wave that will drag me out into the black sea of oblivion. But there's a voice in the wind, and it's telling me that I've not tried everything. I shout at the wind, counting on my fingers all the different strategies that I have tried to get out of the situation that I am in. The voice in the wind tells me, "You have not prayed." Well, indignantly, I start an Our Father, because I want to show the wind that would not change anything. But the words don't come. They had been forgotten. I march back to the house, upstairs, where my 2 small children are asleep in their beds, pick up their small grey prayer book, and go back downstairs to the lounge, and I open it under the table lamp and start to read, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy will be done." There I stop, for I know that what I was contemplating was not my Father's will. I burst into tears and fell senseless onto the carpet. Later I would know that such an experience is called resting in the Spirit. The next morning, I woke up. I walked out of the house again before anyone was awake, and it was interesting that the front door was still open, and I've mentioned this to somebody, and they said that's because the Lord never closes a door on our lives. But this time I walked straight to the offices of a care agency and found help for me and my family. This greatly annoyed my mother-in-law, who said that I was bringing shame on the family and all sorts of things. I've written a book about the time in between with the help of a friend. It's not yet published, about that journey. And it brought me to Gibraltar, and I stopped writing the book. The book finished with the death of my first husband. So now I'm going to fast forward to last summer, When I'm sitting with a ring of ladies, and we're reading about the percentage of women that suffer abuse at some time or another during their life. And I'm learning that not only was I right to seek professional help and get over the abuse that I'd suffered for as long as I could remember, up to 16 years ago, but in fact that it's my duty to do so in order to be healed. And I know that I'm still in the process of healing, but that even in our brokenness, we can be useful foot soldiers in the spiritual battle. And I know that Jeanette is looking for an army of 1 million souls to further the cause of Christ around the world. And here is one reporting for duty.
Very nice.